So before I get started today, this video is going to be broken into two segments to keep the length somewhat short. Now, I hope that you will find peace and comfort as you listen. This video is about suicide. While I will not discuss a particular suicide, I will discuss my own experience with it. For some individuals, this might be triggering. I recognize that. But one thing we should all understand about suicide, no matter who you are, is that talking about it with someone will not increase the likelihood of them committing suicide. Actually, all evidence points to it reducing suicide. So don't avoid it. So if we're going to talk about depression, bipolar, and anxiety, you're going to have to confront it. The it being suicide. I don't like to quote statistics because they are cold and they do not tell the individual stories. Suicide is a personal act, not a random act, as if I could put 100 people in a room and 15 of them would attempt suicide. Suicide is as much about the illness as it is about the support system and a multitude of factors. But I will start with some cold hard facts, which at least shows that mental illness causes very serious issues and distress in people. So let's start with bipolar disorder. About 30 to 50 out of 100 people who have bipolar disease will attempt suicide. Women are going to attempt it 3 times more, but men are 4 times more likely to succeed. And bipolar occurs in the general population about 3%, and equally in about men and women. Now, depression is by far more prevalent, anywhere from 5 to 10% of the population at any one time, so about 2 to 4 times the rate of bipolar, but the rate of suicide is only about 15% of that group. The attempt rate is also lower. The point of all this is simply that mental illness brings a significant increase in the risk of suicide, and bipolar brings a much greater risk. This is all I would want anyone to get out of those numbers. Numbers are cold, and they do not represent the individual stories. If you looked at each suicide and attempt, I believe that you would see significant differences when someone has a support network, has accepted the illness, is willing to work with doctors, and so forth. This is not to say that good people with good networks and great support don't commit suicide. They do. And it causes great pain. The great tragedy is that people look for somewhere to point fingers. They want a cause. They want something to blame. They want one event, one point in time, one person. They want something or someone to which they can assign blame and then direct anger, resentment, and grief, and every other emotion they have. Why? Because it's how we are built as humans. The desire for justice is relatable everywhere in life. When your sports team loses, there is often a focus on one play, not the multitude of errors and events throughout the game. The same is true when we see a mistake at the government level, in our own work environment, and almost anywhere a mistake, error, or loss can happen. We deeply desire that one moment, that one person. Why? Human nature. We don't want to see complexity, the nuances, the many issues that were involved. Why? Because we would have to admit that it would have taken several steps and interventions to stop the event. And that makes us feel helpless. Not sure entirely why, but helplessness is one of the emotions we fear the most. We want that one thing so we can stop it so it doesn't happen again. We want a law, we want a rule, we want a magic button to stop all of it. Our deep desire for this is actually one of the greatest problems affecting suicide. If there were one particular problem that we could fix to stop all the suicides, we would certainly have done it by now. Most suicides actually have a multitude of cascading issues within an individual's life that cause the event. Yes, there is often a trigger event or trigger events, but that's like blaming the final snowflake of an avalanche. Was it really the snowflake's fault that the final piece of snow caused the whole mountain of ice to tumble down the mountainside? We spend so much time on the trigger event, blaming, shaming, isolating, trying to find justice, which, by the way, really will not provide you any peace of mind. What we should be talking about is avalanche control. We should be talking about the avalanche before it becomes uncontrolled and unavoidable. So that is the main reason we are talking about suicide today. Suicide is complex, and while we deeply desire to blame, shame, and sometimes maim the trigger event, there should never be blame. I don't care if everything seems to point to one person or one moment. The faster you get to that point, the better off you will be. I know that it's difficult to look back and see all the moments you missed, all the evidence that really didn't seem like evidence at the time. Hindsight is always perfect, 20/20 vision, but often of no real value unless you seek it to help others. If you are just going to torment yourself with it, it is really of no value at all. The past is only good for three things: remembering the good moments in life, a quick reminder that you've been down that road before and you really don't want to go down that road again, and life lessons that you might pass on to someone else. Everything else is of little value to you or anyone else. Thinking about every moment as if you had the perspective you do now provides little to no value to you and is likely to destroy your life. The first thing anyone has to do when left behind by a suicide is to avoid rerunning your life and the suicide like it was a TV episode. I do not say this with any lack of understanding as to how difficult it is. The emotional pain can be excruciating and mind-numbing and never seem to end. I can tell you that reviewing the past will not end your pain and is likely to increase and cement it. There is only one person who can remove that pain, and he is not a person, and provide that understanding, and that is the Lord, and the mercy and grace found in his atonement. Don't let his suffering go to waste. Allow him to fix what is broken, mend the heart and the mind. I have found that he is often very quick to provide what you need in these cases. Now, it may not come all at once, but I can promise you that it will come. Suicide is complex, and often those involved, especially in the cases of mental illness, do not necessarily understand what they do. They are not in a state of mind to necessarily be held accountable. Now, rest assured that they are not in spiritual prison on the other side of the veil. Often that is one of the reasons that they took their life, because hell was already a reality to them. Now, I would suspect that their greatest regret is the pain that it causes others who have been left behind. Taking their life was meant to stop pain, not increase it. If you don't want them to continue to suffer, then it would be wise that we stop our own suffering. Now, I know that the Brethren of the Church has pointed to, but often stops short of specifically stating that those who commit suicide, especially with mental illness, are more often than not unaccountable for their actions. I understand the perspective that they must maintain. Judgment is as complex as suicide itself, and it would not be right to say that everyone who commits suicide gets a free pass. It is the Lord's call, and it should remain, and that is really what I believe and the brethren are trying to communicate. Since I am not a general authority, I can say I have been close enough to suicide that I could firmly say I was not in a position to be held accountable, and my altered and skewed reality did not allow me to be. I would suppose that it is just the same for almost everyone who is mentally ill and takes their life, but I guess I'm really not in a position to judge that either. So I don't tell many people about my own point in time where suicide was very real, but today you're going to hear it in this second episode. Just as a point, if everyone did what I'm about to do, even those who succeed, I think that you would find that suicide and blame simply cannot coexist. We need to reduce the risk factors and be sure that we address it before it becomes an issue. But blame and shame should never be part of the answer. So I'm going to end this portion of the video, and my story will follow in the next portion of the video. Before I do, I want to tell you how much I am concerned for those who suffer to the point of suicide. I also have a deep concern for those who are left behind after the suicide, and just how much pain they suffer. All I can offer is the Lord's healing balm, that he can take the burden and carry it. I hope that you will reach out to him.